Welcome everyone to this session. Discover the secrets to recognizing and easing stress in your adolescence. So this is going to be another valuable, I like to say, tool in your toolkit. You're here investing time, energy, and the resources that you put in order to be able to glean some things that are going to help you be able to recognize, because a lot of times, the majority of the time, we're missing the signs and abilities to be able to ease the stress of your adolescence. But we have people still logging in, still coming on. So we're going to give just a little more time, about a minute, for others that are logging in right now to get set up. So thank you for your patience. We're just going to wait just several more seconds. All right, so we have a number of you here. Thank you all for joining this session, and let's jump right in. So we're here, and I want to ask you, and I want everyone to kind of engage and type in the chat if you have any questions. This all just coming directly to me. I didn't want any distractions with cameras on or seeing the scrolling of the comments, because I want us to really focus all of our mind and attention on what we're going to take away from this session. But do engage with me. Do send me if you have a question, you have a comment, but definitely jump in right now and let me know if you can recognize your child's unique stress signal. What stress signals? What does your child do that lets you know that they're stressed? So let's see. We have a number of question marks. We're not necessarily sure. Emotional, angry, frustrated, headaches. Very good, because we have physical and emotional responses. All right, so we have some responses, but a lot of times there are a lot of question marks here. We're not too sure. And that's understandable, because a lot of times we're not making the connection that A equals B. So when my child is crying, are we looking for, okay, why are they crying, as in something physical happened? Or are we going beneath that to say, why does it make you emotional? Because that happened. Because there's something deeper that's going on. Instead of looking on just the externals, the goal is to be able to go deeper and understand why they're stressed. It's like if you're sick, you want to be able to not just focus on the symptoms, you want to focus on what's causing the symptom. And that's what we want to delve into here. And as we're going through, one of the biggest challenges in parenting is your self-doubt as a parent. Your child didn't come with a manual. We weren't necessarily deliberately trained on how to effectively raise our kids. We're all just kind of winging it. We're looking at what's prevalent in the day. We're looking at how we were parented. We're looking at social media, movies. We have influences, but was there a deliberate effort and say, okay, when we have that, maybe with babies, with newborn babies, we have that information. But once they get older, we don't really have a manual. We don't really have guidance there. Because your child is responding in a certain way, it makes you feel a certain way. And often it leaves you doubting your parenting skills. And we want to make sure that you understand that because your child is angry, even if they're angry at you, you don't want to take that raw as a reflection that you're not a good parent or something's wrong with your parenting. Always we want to go beneath. We want to look at what is the underlying thing that is going on. Another concern that you have is that you're concerned about your child's lack of confidence and therefore their poor decision-making skills. When I coach families and adolescents, and I'm talking to parents, one of the top, if not the top challenge is, how can we get my child to be more confident? Because we understand that low self-esteem, low self-image is at the center of the poor decisions they're making. If they felt more comfortable in their skin, they wouldn't necessarily be doing this or doing that, or they wouldn't be thinking this way, and we wouldn't have all of these other external results of that internal sense of insufficiency, their lack of self-esteem. So what are your concerns? Do you find that that's top for you? What are your top concerns for your children, for your adolescents? Is it confidence? We have yes, 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 and yes. We have three, yes, yes, and yes, exclamation marks. Absolutely. That is one of the key concerns, one of the key concerns. Just so you understand a bit about me and my background and kind of why I do what I do. My upbringing, very traumatic. For people that have sat and had conversations with me, I've had people close to me said they don't understand how I came up to be normal because of the experiences that I've been through. We lived in houses where mice every night would come running through the sheets, and we had to learn to kind of tuck all the sheets in the corners and over the top over our heads, so that when the mice came in every night, they ran over the sheets and wouldn't be able to get in between the sheets. We've grown up with no food in the house, fridge empty, may have some ketchup and a potato, may have some tea and some sugar or some condensed milk. It's just been traumatic. We were disciplined, let me put it that way, to no end. So all of these situations, and I'm not against discipline. Children that grow up with no discipline, no boundaries, do not live healthy, happy, prosperous lives. It's as bad for them as it is for those that get too much discipline and too controlled. So the happy medium is somewhere in the middle, but we were not in the middle. And we had to, at times, because we had no food, go pick up bottles on the street and sell them. We had to grow peppers. We got into growing peppers, and that's where my love for gardening actually came from, because I had to grow things with my siblings, and we had to go to the stores and sell them. And maybe we would have enough to buy one little piece of bread or some flour to make something, or a little piece of saltfish or something that we had something to eat for that day or a couple days. That's traumatizing for someone who is in their teens, is an adolescent, is a young adolescent. So all of those things traumatized me. Now, as parents, you want to understand something, that your child's reality is not going to necessarily align with your perspective of reality. So as I came up feeling insecure and unsafe in that space, from my perspective, I didn't feel safe, but I couldn't understand. And your adolescent may not be able to understand that you're doing the best you can with what you have. All that I knew was the end result, that I felt unsafe. I felt there was nothing consistent, nothing I could rely upon. And therefore, I had to protect myself. Therefore, it was me and my siblings against the world. Even that world, part of that world was our parents. Because in our mind, they were not doing what we had an expectation of them doing, providing a roof over the head, food on the table, a sense of security, and the basics of life. My father was not able to do that at every phase of our existence. And we couldn't separate the two. We couldn't see that he was doing his best. We only saw the failings, and that's what we focused on. So as your child is going through acting up, acting out, lashing out, they don't necessarily have the mindset or the ability to see that you're doing the best that you can where you are. And you may take that as a judgment on your parenting. And we're not saying that every parent is a perfect parent, but most parents are doing the best they can with what they have. And we just don't know what we don't know. And if my dad had been educated and given tools of how to engage kids at that point, I'm sure he would have done things differently. Same situations, but the conversations, the way that things would have been handled would have been different. And that's the point of why I do what I do, to help to bridge that gap, to help adolescents to see it from a different perspective, to help parents to see it from a different perspective, to help to bridge that gap. So I grew up angry, and it was so much anger in me, and I didn't realize that that didn't have to be who I was and how I responded to the world. Anger is just a shield. It is just a protection mechanism. So if your adolescent is expressing anger and frustration and showing out in ways, understand that that is just an indication that they feel unsafe. It is not an indication. Don't take that to say that you're necessarily a bad parent. You want to be able to remove emotions from it, because as long as your emotions are engaged, you're not going to be able to see things as clearly as you could. But when you can, for a moment, set the emotions aside, look at them and say, what is going on in their heart and mind that they feel unsafe in this moment? You can now look to observe, is it around certain people, around certain circumstances, around what type of situations? Are they angry all day, every day? Or is it just at certain times? At what times? If they're angry all day, every day, then this is something that has been building over time, and the signs have not been able, you have not have been kind of missed. So now they're at the point that it's just going to keep escalating, and it's imperative that you do something immediately. Because if something is not done immediately, if your child is constantly angry, it is only going to increase. And now that anger will express itself outside and physically. Are they going to start abusing themselves? I have a number of adolescents that I've been working with that are cutting themselves, that are suicidal. Suicide rates among adolescents is off the charts. It is increasing. So you want to be able to look at, why is my child so angry? Why do they feel unsafe? From another spectrum is a lot of these adolescents are shooting up the schools. They're abusing and bullying other kids. Something is going on because they need a way to get that feeling outside of them. It's never that they are a bad child. They are not bad kids. Even if they are hurting someone else, is the fact that they just don't have the tools to navigate and to manage the emotions, and the emotions are taking control of them. And that's what I was going through. I was so angry. And I got to the point that if you just looked at me wrong, if I thought you said something wrong, I was off the charts. And I grew up to think that was just who I was. And I took that into adulthood. And this is what you want to consider also. It's not going to change in your child until you help them change it. So at some point, there has to be a turning point. You'd want to make sure that you on purpose integrate a turning point, and you want to do it as soon as possible. So my turning point, when I was an adult, young adult, I was working in a bank and I made some friends. And one friend who actually became one of my closest friends for life gave me this book, just handed me the book and said, I need you to read this book. Because a lot of times we internalize and we think that how we are is who we are. And I thought my anger and my ability to be so sharp with my tongue, I didn't care who you were. I didn't filter it. And on the job, I would just, be sharp. And I've had bosses that have said to me, Sandra, you are so amazing. But if you could only control your emotions and control your tongue, you would have been promoted so many times. So the ability of our children to succeed in life, they must be trained to manage their emotions. Otherwise, they are going to be limited. And a lot of times we may say it's because of other circumstances, the color of my skin, or because I'm not rich or I don't come from that club. But you really want to be able to be authentic and say, yes, those circumstances absolutely, unquestionably exist. What you want to be able to do, though, is separate the two, because everything is not tied into that. We want to be able to look at, is my child the healthiest, happiest emotionally that they can be? So my friend recognized in me that I had some challenges, but also knew that it didn't have to be who I was, because the authentic me is an amazing, loving, giving, gentle, patient person. But the insecure, fearful me, who feels threatened and attacked, that person's not so nice. So he gave me this book and I read it and it changed my world. And that's when I realized that anger, that was just my shield. Behind that shield, behind anger, was an insecure and scared little girl. So you want to be able to help your child and come out from behind the shield, whatever shield they are showing you, but because behind that shield is a scared little child. And they need for you to see past the anger, past the frustration, past the attitude, past the side eyes, past all of the things that in ways that they're expressing it, and understand that your child is lost back there and they need you to come in and help them. Central to kind of my philosophy and my brand is the red brain, blue brain. And when we understand this simple concept, it is mind-blowing, because that scared child, and this is not just in your child, this is in you also, that you understand that you, your child, everyone in existence has a red brain and a blue brain. Your red brain is simply you in your primal state, your child in their primal state. So you may have heard that they said that we have the primal brain and it's a fight, flight, or freeze response. There's actually a fourth that tends to go missed, which is a fawn. So it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state. The fawn is more in social situations, but the fight response is just that anger. They're fighting for their survival. It's not against you personally or whoever they're going up against. It's because that voice in their head is constantly making them feel as though they are insufficient. And one thing we as humans don't like to feel is as though we don't measure up, that we are being criticized. But when that voice in your head is the one criticizing you and demeaning you more than anything external, how do you navigate that? They don't know how. And this is why they're expressing it externally, because they don't know how to manage their internal self. But that red brain is an irrational brain. So they can never think clearly if they're in a state of stress. And this is something that you want to keep forefront in your mind. You cannot expect your child to have a fruitful conversation, to give you an accurate response, to think clearly, make good decisions if they're in a state of stress. You want to be able to understand that you need to bring them into their blue brain, help them to develop, understand that there is a difference, that they have a choice, and that they can manage and learn tools to bring them into their rational brain. Now you can have that conversation. Now they'll be able to make good choices, make good decisions. But a lot of times we as parents are looking in that moment, in that heated moment, to have them come to a conclusion, to make a decision, to act differently. And to them in that brain, all you're doing is confirming that they're not enough, that they don't measure up, because that's the brain they're in. That's the perspective they have. Everything is an attack on them. Only if they're in their blue brain can they see that you said exactly the same thing, but now their ability to filter it is completely different. So in those times that your child is in their red brain, they're in their survival mode, and in that heated moment, your child may agree to whatever they need to agree to. I'm going to clean my room. Yes, I understand that that's wrong or right, or I should do this. And they'll agree to anything because they just want to get out of, they kind of feel like they're in the pressure pot at that moment. And their whole focus is to escape that emotion, that feeling. That's what they're in at that moment. Your child doesn't have the capacity in that moment to make a good decision. So if they agree to anything, they're going to clean their room, they're going to do their homework, they're going to stop doing this or start doing that. They have made that agreement from an irrational brain. And when they come out of that brain or in their blue brain, they are not going to be able to honor any agreements they made in their red brain. If we want true commitments, lasting change, they can only do that when they are in a rational mind, in a rational state, and therefore they can be held to the agreement that they agreed upon. But it's going to be very difficult, and this is where the yo-yo and the friction comes in, that they agree to something, but they don't stick to it because they didn't agree to it in their right mind. So the goal is to get them into their right mind. So when they've now made an agreement in their blue brain from their rational brain, they've made it, and they're much more likely to stick to the agreements they have made. But one of the key things and the key sources of friction that I constantly have from my coaching clients and parents is that they agree to something and now they've broken that agreement. But what mindset were they in? And yes, they should stick by whatever they've said, but remember, they're kids. Their brain has not fully formed. They are not able, they are technically, scientifically not able to make decisions from a brain that is not yet completely formed. So it's extremely helpful if we can keep that in mind, that we can level set our expectations, that we can look at what mind is my child in. So even if that moment they make an agreement, you note it down, but then when they're in a rational state, when you can see that they're calmed down, then you can revisit that agreement. They'll be more willing to be held to that agreement once it's been done from their blue brain. So we want to look at what are some of the reactions that I want you to take note of. And even now, just note as they come up, which ones have you noticed in your child, or as you see it, does it now connect in your mind that, yes, my child has that, but I never realized that was just a stress response, right? Now, more often than not, we know that a nervous habit is connected to their stress in that moment. But do we know that frequent illnesses are also connected? So research shows us that now doctors and researchers are kind of in that 90% space. Before it was maybe 70 to 90. Now I think we've definitely leveled up to 90% of all illnesses can be connected to stress. So when they're getting frequent colds and headaches and pains, we want to look at, is there a stress that we can help them to alleviate that will help them with that, instead of just focusing on the illness by itself. Stomach aches, headaches, fast breathing, just an indication that their red brain just switched on. Difficulty breathing, how are they sleeping? All comes down to their negative self-talk. Listen to how they speak about themselves, how they speak about the world. Do they have a language of hope and growth? Or are they fixed in their mindset to think nothing works out, everything's bad, always seeing the negative in things? That's the talk that's going on inside them. Talked about the anger, the lashing out. Are they forgetful? A lot of times your children may be forgetful and we're not making the connection. It's just a flight response. They're trying to get away from the situation emotionally. So the brain is going to hit the erase button, because if they maintain that thought, it just makes them feel that feeling. They don't feel good about themselves. So the brain is going to release it. So forgetfulness, nothing wrong with your child's brain. It's going to be, why is the brain making an association that whatever it is that they are constantly forgetting has a negative connotation to them? Excessive worry, easily agitated, difficulty concentrating. A lot of times your children are sitting trying to study, doing homework, they're forgetting what they're studying, they're not able to focus, concentrate. It's a stress response a lot of the times. And I always teach them, when they tend to think that something's wrong with them, that they're just not that smart, I always ask them, what do you love to do? And are you distracted around that thing? Do you find it difficult to concentrate and focus and level up when you're playing ball, or whether you're playing an instrument, or whether you're playing that game, or whether you're fill in the blank of whatever it is you love to do? And 100% of the time, it's no. So then there's nothing wrong with your brain. It is a connection that you've made in your brain to associate a negative connotation with that thing. And your brain is responding in a protective way. So there's nothing wrong with your child's brain if they have difficulty concentrating or if they're forgetful. It's a stress response. They're distracted, stress response. They're irritable. They have that fear and anxiety. We know that's stress response. They're emotional, constantly sad and withdrawn. That is a stress response. A lot of times we're thinking, my child's withdrawn, they're not talking to me, that's just how they are. No, your child would love to be engaging you in conversation and be giggling and having fun and all of those wonderful things, but they don't know how. That voice in their head has them kind of locked in a box, and they need your help to get out. And this also ties into those social challenges that they have. So we want to be able to help them understand there are physical and emotional responses to stress. It is just an indication. I like to say, if we do sports, I for some reason always do sports analogies. If you see the referee on the field and they throw up a flag, it's an indication that we need to pause and replay it or do some adjustment before we continue the game. When your child responds in one of those ways, and that list was just some of the ways, there can be countless other ways that your child may be expressing their stress, but it is just a flag on the play. There is nothing wrong with your child. There is nothing wrong with you as a parent. It is just a flag on the play. And we want to keep it in perspective and address it just uniquely on that. Don't let it color everything about you, everything about your child, everything about your household, your connection. Just isolate it and say, what is going on in this instance? And the more you do that, the more you're going to be able to connect the dots, develop a strategy to address it. So we've talked about this red brain, blue brain, and recognizing stress responses, physical and emotional, in your child, but those go for you as well. So what do you see as your stress responses? If my friend had never given me that book, had never opened my eyes to another perspective and another way of seeing myself and understanding myself, who knows how much of my life would I have destroyed? How many opportunities would I have had to bypass because of my anger, thinking that that's just who I am and how I am? And how many people out in the world think this is just who I am? It is not who you are. It is just the shield through trial and error. It's just the shield that came up with you in life. So you want to be able to look at, what are your stress responses? What shields do you have that you kind of throw up when you're stressed? So if you could share that, if we want to be kind of transparent, remember, no one can see you, only I'm seeing the names. Anger, frustration, emotional, withdrawal, anger. Anger is a pretty common one. Agitated, headaches, stomach aches. Yes, when I'm stressed, I get that feeling in the pit of my stomach also. So even as you're looking to learn these things for your child, it applies equally to you. So you want to be able to, the more you can recognize it within yourself and take steps to model how to navigate that, the more you're going to be able to proactively help your child, not only by having conversations and helping them, but by also modeling the behavior for them. That when you're stressed, maybe normally you would yell or you would say or do something. But now when you go forward, you're not going to necessarily do that. And the more you are self-aware, the more you're going to make a connection in your brain that instead of responding when A happens, you respond with B. Now, when A happens, you respond with C. And now people around you are going to say, what's going on? Because that's what happened with me also. People have said to me, who are you? What happened to the old Sandra? Well, she now feels a lot more safe. And the goal is for you to be able to help your child navigate that negative self-talk. Know that it is normal. There is nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with you because of that voice in your head. Everyone has it. Kings and queens, billionaires, the stars that are renowned, the global stars, they still have that voice in their head too. It's part of our human condition. So you want to be able to normalize it. You want to be able to help your child to normalize that voice is not going away. That our brain is always, they call it firing and wiring. It is always active. Your subconscious mind never shuts down. They tell us that we think about 80, depends on whose research, let's just say 60, 80,000 thoughts a day. They say that we make 1,000 decisions a day. The subconscious mind is where we need to kind of get into and impact and build new neural connections so that, as we said before, A will happen, but instead of it automatically firing and wiring to B, it's now going to wire to C, or whichever. You get to choose how you respond to things. Doesn't matter how long it takes, but you will be able to get to the point where whatever it is that you are learning, whatever it is you're learning to build within yourself, it's going to start to flow. It's going to start to make more and more sense to you. It's going to be clearer and clearer, just like that pathway. So as you're looking to help your children build new neural networks, new connections in their brain, new associations, that when they're angry, they don't have to throw a tantrum. When they're angry, they don't have to slam the door. They don't have to curse. They don't have to get physical. They don't have to. Nothing wrong with your anger. There is nothing wrong with the emotion. What you want to help them manage is how they express that emotion. If we make them feel that anger is bad and something's wrong with them when they're angry, because anger is a natural human emotion, when they get angry, they're going to start to criticize themselves even more, think something's wrong with me because anger is bad and I'm angry, therefore I am bad. And that's kind of the foundation. They're going to start making bad choices because I'm bad anyway. What's the point of trying to be good, quote unquote, because all of these emotions that I've been told are bad, I keep feeling, therefore I'm bad, and they go down that spiral. But when we understand there's nothing wrong with any of the emotions, and there are many thoughts that come into our head, not good thoughts, but because we think it and feel it, doesn't mean we've got to act on it, doesn't mean we need to believe it, doesn't mean we have to keep repeating it. This is why we want to proactively help build an awareness, red brain, blue brain, build an awareness. Just because you think and feel it doesn't make it real, doesn't mean you have to act on it. And that you have the ability to rewire associations with that thing. So when you get frustrated on this point, how are you going to express your frustration? What can you do to alleviate that frustration? What can you do about it? And that's how you want to help them do that. And the more they do it, the more that pathway in their mind is going to become stronger. As we're going on, I want to kind of note this negativity bias. It's our tendency to register negative stimuli more easily, stronger. It's going to make a bigger impression on us than anything positive. And that's because of our red brain, because we are designed to survive. So if someone comes and does something, says something that makes you feel or makes your child feel insecure, feel judged, or anything negative, just saying I'm sorry doesn't erase it. For every negative encounter, you will need to have 6 positive encounters to kind of neutralize that one. And this is why we and our kids, when something negative happens, someone judges you, someone makes them feel uncomfortable, makes them feel insecure, hurts their feelings, one positive encounter is not going to erase that. They need a number of encounters that are positive for that now to be neutralized. So we want to make sure that your adolescents are receiving positive affirmations, that they are being noted for even the smallest things. When they do something, oh, thank you for loading the dishwasher. Did you take out the garbage? Thank you for taking out the garbage. Just as it's good for them to say, thank you, Mom, for this meal. Thank you for buying the backpack. Thank you for ironing my clothes. It's just a matter of building that kind of atmosphere in the house. So now when something happens and they didn't take out the garbage, and you will have something to say because they've not done that, then that's one negative in their mind, but you've been constantly acknowledging the things they've been doing. So it'll be easier for them to not take affront and be highly offended by that. But if we never speak anything positive to them, they never hear anything positive from you, but yet every time something's wrong, they no end of hearing from you, then the scale is tilted too far on the negative side. We want to have bonded relationships with confident children. How do they come up with the confidence if they've never been affirmed for things? Or if they're criticized and the negative is noticed more than the positive? We know the negativity bias exists. So we want to make sure that we're noting 6 times more than we are criticizing to kind of keep things in balance. Did that make sense? Give me a yes if it did. Oh, I got a wow. Yes, absolutely. Great. Yes, yes. Yeah, we get the emojis. Thank you. Yes. Yes, exactly. So once you're able to help them replace, because you can't do it for them, you can only help guide them, help them to know that there is a choice. But within you, you want to be able to replace your negative thoughts about your parenting, your negative thoughts about the situations in your life. And then you'll start having positive results, and they will start to see that in and through you. Communicate 93% through body language. It's nonverbal. So it's not so much as what you say, I think that's about 7%. It's about how you are. How do you show up in their space? Do you have a positive perspective? Do you have an aura around you that is positive, that is can do, that is solution based? Or is it that the stresses in your life are constantly what you're expressing, and what's the atmosphere around you? Because you can't change how your child thinks and feels, right? You can't change their mindset, but you can influence them. Remember the research that said when they did research on a group and said, what is your greatest influence? And these are older adolescents. Was it social media? That was only about 28%. The greatest influence on their lives were their parents or close family members. as you're living your best life, as you're valuing yourself and taking care of yourself, as you're living your best life, you are going to inspire them to live their best life. As you're speaking and communicating, they're now going to be more inclined to want to speak and communicate in a positive way. But if all the communication is one of what's gone wrong and what they need to change and how they need to do it better, they're not going to want to have those conversations. And that is going to be the greatest influence and the greatest way for your child to be impacted positively. The US Surgeon General put out a report, and this is just a snippet from that. It would be a tragedy if we beat back one public health crisis, and this was the end of 2019, 2020. If we beat back one public health crisis only to allow another to grow in its place. Mental health challenges in children, adolescents, and young adults are real, and they are widespread. But most importantly, they are treatable and often preventable. Prevention is better than cure. This is becoming an epidemic that they don't know how to navigate that voice in their head. They don't know how to navigate school and the challenges that they're finding there. They don't know how to navigate what they're seeing in social media and what's real and what's not, and where do they place themselves in that mix. They don't know how to navigate things, and they need your help. He goes on to say the mental health crisis at its core is a crisis of what? Connection. A crisis of connection. They are feeling disjointed and disconnected. So when you now are able to help them communicate their feelings in a safe space, we can't ask them to say what's going on, ask them to share maybe some of the bad decisions they've made and the fallout that they may be going through for that. Ask them to be authentic and open with you. If the minute they do, they're going to be criticized. That is not a safe space. You want to be able, this is why I said remove the emotions. You want to be able to have conversations with them because they're going to test you. They're going to look at how are you going to respond when I tell you this? And they're looking not just at what you say, the look in your eye, the inflection in your voice, are your shoulders stiffening? Are you tense? They're reading your body language. When they know that you are a safe space, now they're going to be able to come to you, and that connection can be built and strengthened and strengthened. It is a crisis of connection. Says it must take a relationship first approach. So your approach to raising adolescents must be relationship first. So first and foremost, you want to be able to see, how do I develop a relationship first approach with my adolescent in the midst of these particular situations? And the answer to that is going to be unique to your situation, to your child, to you, because all of us have different parenting styles, different backgrounds, different traditions, different values. There's so many things to factor in, but they all boil down to you need the connection, and it must be relationship first approach. There is a wonderful quote that I like that really kind of puts things in a nutshell. It says, the question used to be, is my child at risk? Now, unfortunately, the fact is every child lives in an at-risk environment. So your child is at risk. What they're at risk for may look different, but they are at risk. So it's not if my child needs help, it's how does my child need help? How can I help them? So you want to recognize that mental health is an essential part of overall health. So as you're deliberate in making sure your child is physically healthy, you want to equally ensure that your child is emotionally healthy. Empower them to recognize and manage how to deal difficult situations. That is central. They don't know how to navigate their emotions. They don't know how to navigate any kind of friction, any difficult situation. Hopefully, you have a school counselor, you have, services, depends on where you are. They have different types of services available because this is so rampant. I'm sure that there are some services where your child can find someone that you can utilize their services to help your child to process their thoughts. If it's something that you don't feel equipped to do, or when you try to do it, it doesn't end well, then please do look around, ask around the school or wherever they are for someone who is able to connect with your child. It's important. They have to have a connection and they have to feel that there is a relationship. They're not there to be their friend, but they have to feel friendly, that this is a friendly environment. They want to make sure that they have someone with whom they have a connection. So you may have to try out a few different people, situations, before you find someone that kind of resonates with your child. Otherwise, it can make situations worse instead of better. One of the greatest ways to connect with your child is to share your story, as is age appropriate, for them to know that you're not perfect, that you understand because you went through the same thing, that you get it. One of the greatest ways to connect with your child is for them to understand that you're not perfect and for you to be vulnerable with them. And I always quote, as is age appropriate. So you want to look at how you share your story and how much you share, because some are going to take what you said and kind of twist it and use it negatively and going to flip it back against you. So it's not that we're hiding or being duplicitous. It's just we want to exercise wisdom and know that there is a progression on how much you share. But you definitely want to make sure that your child knows that you're not perfect. So even if your story is a bit much to share right now, even just saying the words, you know what, I understand. I didn't agree with everything my parents said either. You know what, I understand. Everybody doesn't see everything the same way. I understand. But can we look at it this way? How about this? You want to be able to have conversations where you are listening to them, hearing what they're saying, looking at their body language, hear their heart, and respond to that. Not based on culture strictly, not based on how you were parented, based on what they're saying to you. And that's going to be key to your legacy. Are we going to leave children that are angry and broken and frustrated and just have no self-esteem and lack all confidence, and therefore they're going to take anything from life? You have a certain amount of time to influence them in that adolescent phase, because once they cross over that line, your ability to influence them seriously, drastically diminishes. But if you influence them well and you are connected in this phase, then you will influence them for their life. That when they're 20, they're 30, they're 40, they're 50, they're still going to come look for your advice. They're still going to value your input. They're still going to be able to come to you. But if they grow up angry and frustrated and they never felt safe, connection that you could possibly have in their adulthood is going to be somewhat diminished majority of the time. Prevention is better than cure. So what can you do that will help them? You can recognize their stress indicators, and then you can look to how you approach them, engage them at those moments is critical to building that connection and developing that relationship. I mentioned before, the only reason I believe I survived my childhood was because of my faith. If it were not for God as my foundation, I don't believe I would have survived. And if I did survive, I would have been on a horrific, I always say I would have been a horrific person. For those of you that have faith, that have some religious foundation, they have a God who sees them, cares for them, and that they can turn to. So your child is on the pathway of their life, and they're turning, looking to you for help. What can you do that's going to help them, right? So I want you to kind of take that away. What can you do to help them? The road is open. Opportunities are endless. And it's not, a lot of times we think it has to be some magnificent, huge thing that you have to do. It could just simply be as profound as now when your child gets angry, instead of responding anger to anger or frustration to their anger, or feeling insecure and incomplete to their anger, you can simply pause, recognize, say to yourself, my child is in their red brain. What is the underlying cause? And it may just be, let me just give them a hug. Depends on their age. Some don't like to be touched. So you want to make sure that you're appropriate as into their love language, how it will resonate with them. It could be that you're just silent and let them speak. But responding anger to anger is red brain to red brain. No good is going to come from that, because remember, you're both in the wrong brain, in irrational mindset. Positive cannot come from that. So thank you all for being here. I thank you for the comments. I've seen them coming in, and there are some questions there we're going to look at. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for investing your resources, your time, for being here. Parenting adolescents can be the most challenging thing you will ever do in your life, but it also can be one of the most rewarding things. So elevate your journey, personalize things for your child. And each child, if you have more than one, personalize it for each child. Let's look at some questions. Okay, scrolling. Don't know what to say when I'm with my child. I feel uncomfortable. That's normal. But find something around you, something that you can integrate that takes the focus off the two of you sitting looking at each other. Doing homework. Oh, I'm pretty good at math. Let me help you. Put it up on the screen. Or let's watch a movie together. Or what's the funniest thing you saw on social media this week? Or fill in the blank. Ask them open-ended questions to share what's going on in your life. Who's, your best friend now? How's that going? How did you do here? What would you like to do? So you could point to the past of things that have happened. You can ask them, okay, we're here now. What would you like to do? What's your greatest need right now? What do you think that would take the most stress off of you? How can I help you? Or you could look to the future. What would you like to do? Is there anything that you would like to do? Any hobbies, anything that would interest you? So you have many different ways that you could look to connect with your child, but you want to make sure that you proactively do it. My child is not talking to me at all. A closed book. Well, if your child is currently not talking to you at all, it was a progression of things. And a lot of those flags on the play, we didn't recognize them as flags on the play. So you want to, I would say you want to look at and just observe them and see if you can recognize any flags, because then you want to kind of target your response to where the pain point is. So where and when are they expressing that anger, that frustration? When do you find that they're more closed out than other times? What can you do? You want to be also deliberate in scheduling time for your child. Yes. So yes, I do have that up on the screen. If you want to have a one-on-one free consultation, we can have a discussion about your unique situation, and I can give you some guidance on kind of where you can start the process of that connection and building that relationship. All right, so just scan the QR code and just put yourself in any open slot that works for you. I am a certified master life coach. I am an author, teacher, mentor. I do workshops, but I also do some one-on-one. I'm very limited on how much one-on-one I can do because time is limited. I do also do some group sessions. So if we had a few people from this session that wanted to do a group session, then you can send me a message and we'll put, at least if we have at least 5 people, we could put together a group. If you have 5 that you want to start a group with and you want me to help facilitate that, you can let me know that there. And then we could have group sessions, and that sometimes is even a greater support because then you realize that it's not just you, and you can hear and share with other parents and caregivers. So if that's of interest, send me an email, a message, and I will put you on the list. And once we have enough people for a group, I'll proceed from there. I'll send you out. We'll try to coordinate a date and time for that. And everything will be virtual. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we'll be able to facilitate that. All right. So time's kind of going. Any questions or anything you have that we haven't addressed, please send me a message and I will respond to you. Guarantee you that. Okay. So I'm here if you need help, if you're interested in whether it's group coaching or one-on-one coaching, send me a message. You can send it to admin@sandralc.com, the address there in the bottom. All right. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Sorry I couldn't get to all the questions, but please, if you still have a question is still outstanding, do send me a message and I will respond to that. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.